اليوم نحن نبدأ في إجراء هذا الحوار من داخل السفارة الإندونيسية في القاهرة. نتحدث اليوم ونطرح الكثير من التساؤلات حول هذا البلد الجميل، الاقتصاد والسياسة وأهم القضايا التي تشغل القيادة السياسية والنظام الحاكم في اندونيسيا، والتجارة والاتفاقيات الخاصة بمجموعة العشرين، وطبيعة العلاقات بين مصر واندونيسيا، والاتفاقيات الثنائية والعلاقات المشتركة بين البلدين، فضلا عن الاهتمامات الخاصة بالقضايا الآسيوية والإسلامية، كل ما يتعلق باندونيسيا وكل الاهتمامات الخاصة بالشعب وبالحكومة الإندونيسية مطروحة للحوار من خلال هذا اللقاء. واسمحوا لنا في بداية هذا الحوار أن نرحب بضيفنا الكريم سعادة السفير الإندونيسي في القاهرة السيد حلمى فوزي. Mr. Ambassador, thank you first of all for accepting our invitation to hold this interview, and we're so happy to make this interview with you today.
It's my honor actually to participate in this interview.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ambassador, first of all, the variety we have about and we know about Indonesia, how do you see it? A large number, hundreds of ethnic groups, thousands of islands, many cultures, many languages. How do you see this large variety of things and issues there? How do you see it there in Indonesia?
We perceive our diversity as a blessed gift from Allah, from the God.
Yeah.
And we see it as our strength instead of our weakness. So as you said, Indonesia is a vast archipelago countries.
Yes.
An archipelago consists of more than 17,000 islands with more than 300 ethnic groups, speaking more than 600 ethnic languages,
Yeah.
and with a variety of religious backgrounds.
And you there embrace this variety and you like it, you see it as a power and a strength.
Yes, and we appreciate and celebrate our differences.
Yeah.
And we are proud in our national motto, unity in diversity.
Yeah.
We realize that we have a different ethnic and religious background, and yet we have a strong feeling of unity as one Indonesian.
How do the Indonesian people adapt themselves? How do they adapt themselves to this variety and this difference and these big differences between people there? Do they see it as a positive thing, a good way to live with it, and strength as you talk about it, Mr. Ambassador? Do the people there see things the same way?
In fact, far before Indonesia gained its independence, in 920, in the years of 1928,
Yeah.
1928,
Yeah.
Indonesians youngsters already pledged themselves, despite our differences, despite our diversity, different religious background, ethnic background. We are pledged that we have only one country, Indonesia, one language, Indonesian language, and one nation, Indonesia.
Yeah.
So despite we have hundreds of languages, eventually we choose one language as our national language, which is Bahasa Indonesia.
This is the unity of Indonesia.
Yes,
This
indeed.
wide range of differences is really the unity of the country.
Yes, and we regard this diversity is the beauty of Indonesia. So Indonesia beautiful because of its rich cultural diversity.
Yeah.
And we realize this is actually our strength. And we celebrate, appreciate the differences of the Indonesian peoples. So if you travel, for instance, from one part of Indonesia to another, you can easily distinguish the distinct cuisine, food, the different from one place to another. So it's also really reflect in every aspect of our life, in custom, in how people dress, how people have their cuisine or food and so on. So
but people are going along in a good way with this.
in a good way with this. So because we understand, we realize, despite our differences, that we are one as Indonesia.
Let's talk, Mr. Ambassador, about the foreign affairs. On the first level, we talk about the neighbor countries. How do things go between Indonesia and neighbor countries? What are the common interests, the common factors, the common ground you're standing on with neighbor countries?
Indonesia also the founding fathers of Association of Southeast Asian Nations.
Yeah.
So we realize the first things we have to do is we have to create a peaceful surrounding, peaceful environment. So that's why creating a friendly atmosphere, a friendly neighbor is our main priority in our foreign policy. So we have this principle of the centrality of ASEAN as the core of our Indonesian foreign policy.
Yeah.
And that's why in this region, in Southeast Asia, we solve any dispute through consensus, through dialogue. So I think you can see also Southeast Asia is one of the most stable and peaceful regions in the world.
Still talking about the foreign affairs, concerning the relationship and the foreign affairs concerning the West, the United States of America, Europe. How are things going? Are things going well on all the levels with this region of the world?
Yes, everything is going well. Indonesians embrace what we call the principle of active and free foreign policy. We are not align ourselves with a particular bloc. For instance, during the Cold War, Indonesia as well as Egypt is a part of the non-aligned movement. We not belong to the Soviet bloc or the American bloc. We try to maintain an active, independent foreign policy. So we have good relations with any country. The West countries, for instance, Europe and United States. Also at the same time, we have a very good relation with China, with Korea, both of them, South Korea and North Korea. And certainly we have very good relations with the Arab world, in particular with Egypt. Since Egypt is the first country that recognized Indonesian independence. So the first treaty of friendships we made with foreign country is the treaty between Egypt and Indonesia in 1946.
Starting from this point, sir, you referred now to the Egyptian-Indonesian affairs.
Yeah.
How do you see the mutual affairs between both countries, the common ground for communication and for cooperation, politically, economically, on all the levels?
We have a very long, strong, friendly and warm relations with Egypt. If you see for instance, the voting within the international forums such as the United Nations, the position of Egypt is similar with Indonesian positions. So we always in the same page in many international issues. Yeah. We support the Palestinian cause.
Are we talking here about cultural and Islamic issues or more of political and economic issues?
Political and economic issues.
And resemblance between both countries?
Yes. So there is always similarity between the position of Egypt and position of Indonesia in many international forums. So we share the same vision between Egypt and Indonesia, and it reflected in our positions in United Nations, in the General Assembly, in the Organization of Islamic Countries, and in the non-aligned movement.
Usually, are the points and concerns of international main issues or points for agreement between politics of Egypt and politics of Indonesia, the decisions of the regime in Egypt and the regime in Indonesia are always more or less similar, or like each other concerning the major international issues, or no?
Yes, more or less we are in the same page. We are in the same positions in perceiving many international issues. I think in this sense we can say that Egypt and Indonesia share similar visions in its foreign policy orientation.
And similar concerns.
Similar concerns as well.
Yeah.
So, for instance, Egypt also the leading country that fights against colonialisms. Indonesia also at the same time, through our Bandung declarations, we also, together with Egypt, established the Africa-Asia movement in support the independence of ASEAN African countries from colonialisms. And also the cooperations continued in the non-aligned movement in other international forums. So I think the foundations of the solid relations between Egypt and Indonesia has been already laid down since many years ago.
In today's fast-moving, integrated world economy, potential investors seeking to gain access to a thriving market should look no further than Egypt. Egypt is your access to the world. The routes are paved, the infrastructure is set, natural resources are readily available. New laws have opened new doors. A 26 million strong skilled labor force is on call. 1.6 billion consumers are waiting. The stock market is on the rise. The potential for high return is prime. The economy is in line for versatile growth, and stability is firmly in place. Now is the time to become a partner in Egypt's growth and development for the future.
Mr. Ambassador, how far do you think things are going well concerning the commercial exchange between both countries?
That's actually the big challenge now. We have to translate this political closeness, political cooperations into new dimensions.
And mutual understanding between both countries.
And mutual understanding between the two nations, two countries, into new dimensions, namely economic cooperations, economic and development cooperations. And now I'm proud to say that we have a very good trade relations between Egypt and Indonesia. The trade volume between Indonesia and Egypt reached more than 1.5 billion US dollars. Although I have to say frankly that the surplus is still in favor of Indonesia. But I think it reflects the growing cooperations, the growing trade relations between Egypt and Indonesia. And Egypt now also
You think, Mr. Ambassador, that the current circumstances concerning the affairs between both countries give potentials, high potentials for increasing the numbers of commercial exchange?
Yes, and there is ample of opportunity. We have to do our homeworks to optimize, to increase the trade volumes between the two countries. I think, for instance, now Egypt is the main exporters of dates to Indonesia, and 56% of the total export of dates of Egypt actually goes to Indonesia. And also we are the main exporters of palm oil to Egypt, and also coffee and tire. So I can say that.
And tires.
And tires as well.
Indonesia is very famous for manufacturing tires, and is competing with neighbor countries in Asia concerning this kind of industry.
That's right, but you have to know as well, we are the second biggest rubber producers in the world. So we have the natural resources to build, to manufacture tires. And this is one of the Indonesian export to Egypt. But since the last 3 years, I see the growing, the increase of Egyptian export in terms of fruits to Indonesia. So now if you, for instance, go to any supermarket in Indonesia, you can easily also find
Egyptian
olive oil,
products.
Egyptian product. Dates, for instance, almost likely that you have dates from Egypt. And also now the olive oil. It's also one of the main
you think that
commodity.
these good chances are ready for expansion now?
Yes, I think we should facilitate traders, buyers from both sides to know each other.
Yeah.
So, for instance, the Indonesian embassy in Cairo regularly organize business gathering and business matching together. Businessmen from Indonesia and businessmen from Egypt, so they can cut a deal for trade transactions. In Egypt, everyone feel at home. We appreciate the role of Al-Azhar in spreading Wasatiyah Islam. Rahman, this reflects the generosity of Egyptian people. Egypt is the hub to connect Indonesia with other Middle East countries, African countries, and the number of Indonesian tourists visiting Egypt will be doubled.
How do you estimate the influence of Indonesia in the current time concerning the participation of Indonesia in the international or global organizations and international and world and global agreements now?
Indonesia now is a member of G20, and also with Egypt, we also member of Organization of Islamic Countries.
Yes.
Both countries, Egypt and Indonesia, also member of non-aligned movement.
And all the Asian, unions and organizations as well.
Union as well. We are Indonesia member of ASEAN,
Yeah.
founding members of ASEAN, also member of APEC, for instance. Yeah. And both Indonesia and Egypt is on the right path. That according to a very recent report, that Egypt will be one of the top 20 economy in 2030, and Indonesia as well will be ranked number 5 in 2030. And I'm also like to say that this year also mark for the first time Indonesia as a 1 trillion economy.
Yeah.
So I think both countries are in the right path, and I'm very optimistic that Egypt and as well as Indonesia will become the major trading partners.
On the Asian level, how do you see the competition with the competitive Asian economies competing with the Indonesian economy?
Yes, certainly we have China. You see, this is I think now the biggest economy in the world. But we have also a very good cooperation with our neighboring countries in the Far East. For instance, within ASEAN, we have this now what we call it ASEAN Economic Society. So there is a free flow of goods and services between ASEAN countries. It's a kind of free trade agreement between the amongst ASEAN countries. And also apart from that, we also have this agreement with China, ASEAN China Free Trade Agreement. And also we would like actually to extend this kind of agreement with Egypt and with African countries.
Are the Asian countries now, or more specifically the Asian economies, helping each other well and cooperating with each other well to help the growth of and encourage the growth of the Asian economy in general?
Yes, we have a very number of mechanisms to support each other in terms of financial support, technical cooperations, and we also facilitate businessmen of each countries of
Asian
ASEAN.
economy,
Yes, ASEAN economy, and we have a number of forums to strengthen cooperations between ASEAN countries.
What are the main challenges for the Asian economy, or specifically the Indonesian economy? What are your biggest fears about the Indonesian competition for the Indonesian economy in the coming phase of time, and your biggest economic challenges coming in the coming phase of time?
In the coming years, we see an increasing tendency toward the applications of trade tariff and non-tariff barriers in international trading.
Yeah.
So instead of opening the market, there is a tendency now that countries tend to apply more nationalistic barriers and so on, that might hinder international
that might give a bad influence or a bad effect or a negative effect on the transactions of the money and of the goods.
That's right. So you see this trade war between, at least the rhetoric of trade war between China and
this
United
is one
States,
major
for
challenge
instance.
now.
This is one major challenge, and also a number of political development. For instance, we hear very recently the possibility of the new sanctions against Iran, and those who also engage in the trade activities or economic activities with Iran, for instance, it also might affect trade and economic cooperations in the region. So
are you talking here about the Iranian economy or the Irani nuclear project and the politics, the foreign Irani politics?
The politics of the for instance, as now President Trump withdraw from this Iranian nuclear deal.
Yeah, the nuclear project and the nuclear agreements.
Nuclear agreements, and then we'll reinstate sanctions against Iran, and also will apply sanctions against those who engage in terms of trade or economic cooperation with Iran. So these political circumstances to some extent become
so here you're concerned, Mr. Ambassador, about the potential bad influence of politics and nuclear ambition in the region on economy.
On economy.
Yeah.
Yes. The situation is slightly quite different compared to in the region of Asia, in particular in the Far East. In the Far East, despite our political differences, I think the trade will continue. So to some extent, political differences doesn't affect trade at all. Let's take for example, now we have also increasing tensions in South China Sea between ASEAN countries and like Vietnam, the Philippines, and China. Also, but in terms of trade, we have no problem. So despite these political tensions, the trade will continue.
These issues do not affect the amount of trade in the Far East.
In the Far East. So it appears that, okay, we can have some differences, even tensions in politics, but in terms of trade and cooperation, it will continue business as usual.
we are ending the first part of our episode or our interview, Mr. Ambassador. What is the message you would like to send from here, from the Indonesian embassy in Cairo, to both the Egyptian people and the Indonesian people? And we will go on in the second part to explore many more issues about Indonesia.
Egypt and Indonesia have a solid, long and friendly relations. Most of these relations are in the social, cultural and political relations.
Yeah.
But now I think it's very timely for us to translate these relations into new dimensions, which is to increase our economic and trade cooperations.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, and we are going well, and we're looking forward to going on with this interview. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my pleasure.
مشاهدينا، بهذا الجزء من الحوار نصل إلى ختام الجزء الأول من هذا اللقاء ومن حوارنا مع سعادة السفير حلمي فوزي السفير الإندونيسي في القاهرة، ونختتم هذه الحلقة من حلقات أوراق دبلوماسية. وفي الأسبوع القادم إن شاء الله نواصل الحوار مع السفير الإندونيسي في القاهرة، ويتجدد لقائنا مع حضراتكم من خلال أوراق دبلوماسية.